Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Angelica Gulick, Education Manager for United Contractors. Thank you for joining us today for Women in Construction Leadership Panel with a focus on recruiting, retaining, and elevating women in the construction industry. A couple of things before we get started. First, I want to thank Autodesk for sponsoring this event today. This event is being recorded and will be available on our website. I'll send an email out to all registrants once that becomes available. At the end of the event, we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions at any time, please type them into Q&A at the bottom of your screen. If you are sharing your link or calling in, please send me your name and let me know that you are attending today. Finally, there is a short survey at the end of the event. If you can take a few seconds to complete that, we would really appreciate it. And now I would like to turn it over to our moderator, Amy Marks with Autodesk.
Thank you so much, Angelica. My name is Amy Marks. I am the Vice President of Industrialized Construction Evangelism, and I'm so thrilled to be here today with this amazing panel of incredible people and humans. And I really wanted to do this panel today because I think it's important that even though I didn't have a lot of mentors or role models to look at, I try to get in front of our industry and our ecosystem as much as possible. So that's why I decided to do this today. Our panelists are going to introduce themselves briefly and tell you also why they decided to do this panel. So let's start with Emily Cohen from United Contractors. Emily.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks, Amy. I'm Emily Cohen, Executive Vice President of United Contractors. Thanks, everybody, for participating today. I'm here because I want more women to have a positive experience in this industry.
Fantastic. Donna Rearman from Stomper Company, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Donna Rearman. I am currently CFO of Stomper Company. We do specialized demolition. I'm a past president of United Contractors, the second woman in 40 or 50 years, I'm not sure. I also co-chair the Labor's Craft and Negotiating Committee for United Contractors.
Thank you.
My vision is there's a wealth of opportunity. It's an exciting industry, and we need to be inclusive of women to help with the shortage of manpower, of people power that we do have.
Thank you so much, Donna. And Dina Kimble from Royal Electric, if you would go next, please.
Absolutely. Hello, good afternoon. Dina Kimble, President and CEO at Royal Electric Company. I've been in construction operations and leadership for over 20 years now, hard to believe. Our mission at Royal is to build people who build relationships that allow us to build great projects. And as a sort of side passion, my mission is to recruit young people into our industry. I think we have so many careers to offer and to people who just want to build things. So that's why I'm here today.
Great. Another fabulous human, Jorge Quesada from Granite Construction. Oh, you're on mute, Jorge. We need to hear every pearl.
You know what? My apologies. Different platforms today, but so it's Jorge Quesada, Inclusive Diversity Vice President at Granite. I'm really excited that I got invited to participate. And I can take you back to 1976 when my mom came home and she was flustered and she looked at me and said, if you ever become a supervisor, and I'm going to say correctly here, don't you ever treat a woman like I was treated today. I was in the 6th grade at the time, and I've carried that with me as an ally. So when people see me talking about becoming an ally and making an impact, I'm here to support the work that not only United Contractors is doing, but to Emily's point, I would love to see more women in the construction industry.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Caitlyn Frank from Dome Construction, who's calling in from the LCI right now that I've been on other panels with. Caitlyn.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Caitlyn Frank, and for the last 10 years, I have been a superintendent for 3 mid to large sized GCs, both on the East Coast and on the West Coast. And I have always been the first female superintendent. I'm really happy to be here and excited to talk about kind of what those experiences have been like as the only female and the first female for these 3 companies, and talk about how we can empower each other.
And certainly not least, another great human, Mark Breslin from United Contractors. Please introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Amy. I'm the CEO of United Contractors. I've been the CEO for over 30 years. I would say that over the course of my tenure, almost all of my senior managers have been female. Maybe I come with a little bit of Jorge's story. I was raised by a single mom. I had 5 sisters, no brothers, and I have a daughter. So I'm pretty much all in on women leadership, and the opportunity to advance that today is something personal to me. So I appreciate being invited.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen for a minute now, and we'll hopefully get this going. Here we go. You should all see my screen. So we all talked about some things in the panel prep, and we talked about the fact that there's is such a tremendous time of change. You know, COVID created some different things in our ecosystem, our industry, that we're using technology differently, we're acting differently, we're behaving differently. But there is actually a formula for change that I actually love to live my life by. And it's Dan Miller's formula for change. Funny enough, those of you who may or may not know this, Dan Miller, had this formula, put it out there, didn't get credit. A couple other guys ended up getting credit for it. And then retroactively, people have started recognizing that it was actually her formula and not the 2 gentlemen afterwards that sort of evolved it. But so this is Dan Miller's formula for change. Change really has to happen. In order for it to happen, you have to have first dissatisfaction with the way things are right now, and multiply that by a vision of actually what's possible. And then you need first concrete steps of action. So that dissatisfaction times a vision for what's possible times first concrete steps of action really have to be greater than the resistance of that change. And in our ecosystem, it's internal and external resistance. So we all looked at this formula and decided we might talk about things in reference to this formula as we talk about change and the change that we want to have happen in this ecosystem. So let's start with that dissatisfaction part. Nobody changes if everything's fantastic, right? And if everything's going well. So what is it about our ecosystem and the timing of what's going on in all of the industries, because we represent several different industries that we're in? Why change now? What's so bad about now, or what's so different about now that we want to change? Maybe Dina, will we start with you first?
Sure, I'd be happy to start. So first of all, I want to say I'm so proud to be a part of this industry. We truly build the world around us. And if you look at our history, we've accomplished so much. We are innovators in construction, innovators in materials and methods and productivities and defying the odds. And I think on many fronts, like job site safety or this diversity and inclusion space, I think it's important that we don't judge the past based on today's standards, but we really take a look at it and we go, where do we want to go and what's our vision to get there and be leaders in that space? I recently spoke to a panel of young construction students, female construction students, and I told them I'm so excited for you to be entering the industry right now because it is such a time of change, like you were saying, Amy. And I think now, more important than ever is the time because of the workforce shortage. We've known about it for a long time. We've talked about how to combat it. And recently, the 2021 AGC Autodesk workforce survey was released, and it found that 86% of contractors have difficulty filling open positions. 70% of union firms and 74% of non-union firms couldn't fill craft positions. Around 50% of our construction workforce is over the age of 50. So we have a real issue that we know about, that we've got seats to fill, we've got jobs to fill. So we have to be able to promote, first of all, recruit, which I think the industry is doing a much better job today than we were 5 or 10 years ago. But we really have to promote, retain, and truly elevate young people and millennials. And obviously, women make up 50% of the workforce, so we're missing the boat if we're not really targeting them. And they have so much to offer, as I've found in my company. Similar to Mark, half my executive team is women, and I have a huge percentage of my leadership team is women, and you can just see the benefits of that. So I think that's why now workforce shortage, and we have young people who want to be part of this industry. So how do we grow them, whether they're women or diverse ethnic backgrounds or even the young men?
I mean, the great thing about 50% of the workforce is there's a lot of diversity mixed up in that 50% as well, right? So you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as we say. My friend Amanda Gillespie from Facebook, the other day on a panel, I said, if I could wave my magic wand, what would you ask for today? If I could fix anything, she said, do you have 100 electricians? That was her answer back. We don't have 100 electricians, right? That's what you're saying. We don't have 100 electricians. We don't have 100 carpenters. We don't have 100, concrete workers or demolition workers. We don't have them. They're not here anymore, right? So hopefully that's part of this change. And Jorge, we need return on investment for that, right? So
Sure.
every CEO always asks me, like, why do we have to change? Why do we have to do this thing that's new or that's a different behavior? So, and you've been in a lot of other industries and worked for some successful construction companies. What have you learned from that in this dissatisfaction of why now and what we need to do that other people have?
So thank you for that. There's a couple layers to it, and I'm going to build off what Dina just like lobbed the softball to me. I think the first return on investment is we could literally fill this shortage. There's a great demand, and we've seen the supply of talent over the years just shrink, and the demand is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to companies are going to get into thinking about, why am I I can't believe I'm paying interns this much money. I cannot believe I'm paying these folks this much money, because the demand, right, is going to be greater and the supply is going to be so short. So just think about that. The return on it, first of all, is we can fill these positions if we think about women. The second one is we know from other case studies that we're going to get greater engagement in the workplace. We're going to get greater collaboration. So you do that. And so then why now? And what have I learned from other companies? I think the first thing that I'll tell you that I've learned is you have to commit yourself to this work. You have to say to yourself, the companies that have been successful are the ones that have committed, they've improved the process, and they've optimized the systems that they've put in place. We cannot allow, I think, at this time to hold ourselves back, because the risk is too big and we're not going to see the return. And that's, I think, because it's not only the skilled labor that we're talking about. We're talking about folks in technology. Who would have thought that we needed people who knew how to fly drones in construction? And I've only been here 2 years, and it's a fascinating position trying to figure out a job description for it. But anyway, I say that to you because it's more complex than just the skilled labor. It's the people in the controllers department, the marketing department. It's everywhere, because we're competing against other industries as well for that talent.
Interestingly enough, there are other industries that have done really well at it. I mean, the law profession, right, has like something like 40-something% chief legal officers right now. Netflix who had an EEOC against Hollywood, not to Netflix, had the numbers just like ours. They have something like 47% in their leadership and 40-something% in their company. They're at the top of their game, making more money than anybody. So what makes us think if we get women in the space, it's going to be different?
So just let me say something real quick about that. I think, my intuition tells me it's, when it's B2C, I think when consumers and customers are demanding that you show up a certain way because the demographic is saying, sell to me a certain way, these companies have done well, like CPG and so forth. When it's B2B and you don't really need to, you're not feeling the pressure that much. But now we have clients that are demanding that we get diverse, that we see more women in the conversations or in leadership teams. So sorry for jumping in, but I just wanted to build on what you just said.
Hey, Jorge, I remember when people would say, like, who is the customer we're going to go talk to? Well, there's 3 women customers and 1 man. And they would say, true story. And Emily and Caitlyn, I'm coming to you guys next, because we're being really honest about this. The men in the room would say, should we bring a woman? Who do we have? And I was always a consultant, or I own my own business. They're like, what, can your assistant come? And I'm like, listen, that woman better say something in that room. It's not enough just to put somebody in front of these people. And we all know, I mean, Emily, we're being really honest. Do we really want women in the space? Have we really wanted women in the past in the space here?
Yeah, I think to Jorge's point earlier, I love when he says, your company is perfectly designed for the results you're getting. And so another way of looking at that is our industry is perfectly designed for the results we are getting. And so, I mean, I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that for 100 years, 200 years, since the beginning of time, women have not been welcome in this space. Women were not welcome in construction. They were not wanted in construction for a whole host of reasons. So I think the question that we have to ask ourselves, we meaning every company, every leader of every company, and everybody in a leadership or supervising role at every company has to ask themselves is, do I want women in this space? And dig deep, because part of the reason we're getting a huge F in this space, I think lies in that truth. We have to want women in the space, because you're not going to fool women like, oh shit, we got this workforce shortage, so now women come work with us, you're wanted here, because you just can't make up for all, you know, the last 100 years, I say, of telling women directly and indirectly that they're not wanted or welcome or safe in this space. And you also don't have to say it directly. People know, all people know when they are not wanted in a space. And it's rarely because somebody says it directly, although that happens too.
Yes.
It's usually how you're made to feel. So we have to be really conscious and conscientious and strategic about changing the way we recruit and retain and empower women in a more diverse workforce to belong inside of our own companies. It's not enough to just say, we've got a workforce shortage, go find some women.
Right. Caitlyn, you heard what she said. It's not about saying those things. Talk to me about the dissatisfaction from the other side. We want, definitely companies need to be dissatisfied in order to change, but the people that are here, there's a difference between diversity, finding women, and making them feel like they belong. Tell me what the other side feels like of dissatisfaction.
Like, Emily, you knew exactly what I was going to say, because I have this whole idea. When I step foot on a job site, I know who I am. I know what I want for my career. I know what my goal is. But that doesn't mean that I am welcomed. It doesn't mean that anyone else thinks that I belong there. And I had so much pushback over the years. And being the only female and being a young female, the questions I got asked, I wasn't taken seriously. I was asked if I was at work with my dad. You know, am I the architect? And I just got a lot of pushback. And it took me 10 years of almost giving up some of my personal life to really prove to myself and prove to everyone around me that I belonged there. And once I got that recognition, I started to really gain some trust from our trade partners, from the people I was working with. But it wasn't easy, and I had to have some big shoulders to do that. And I'm not saying it was right the way I had to handle a lot of things, in the sense of, you know, I had to take a lot of crap in the field. A male colleague never would have gotten the crap that I got. And I knew I belonged there. I knew I could do it. And I wasn't going to let it stop me, but I could see how it could stop a lot of people. I have a mini me at Dome. She's a field engineer about to become an assistant superintendent. And I think if I had had someone like that to look up to, I didn't have a female superintendent to look up to. I didn't have, you know, someone to take me under their wing. And I did get some male colleagues along the way that, you know, were willing to take me along. But there were some things I had to learn on my own. And I had to kick people off the job site. You know, I had to get rid of a general foreman once. I've had people scream at me. I've had cartoons drawn of me. I've been catcalled. The latest thing is your phone number is plastered all over the job site as a superintendent. Well, guess what's linked to your phone number? Probably all of your social media accounts. They find you there as well. I've been told I have no idea what I'm doing. And I've had people who have tried to make decisions for me about where my career is going to go and what I can actually do. I didn't let any of this stop me. But at the same time, I didn't like the attention. You know, I stuck out like a sore thumb to begin with. And having all that additional attention when I had to call people out, when I had to kick them off the job site. If I was a male superintendent and I kicked someone off a job site, I was just angry. I bet they were down the street later that day having coffee or grabbing a beer. But as a female superintendent, I was called B, big capital B. And I was angry and I was pissed off and I couldn't control my emotions. It was very different. And I'm not saying that, female in the field should have to push back and deal with this crap. But I have to give kudos to the women who are out there right now doing this because they have big shoulders. They're moving this industry forward with what they can do. I think about the next generation a lot, about where they're going to come and how we can actually change it for them. And without the women who constantly push back right now, and without support from other men in the field who are going to help push things forward, things aren't going to change. And we are in an industry that does not like change.
Right. Donna, she said, I was always the youngest one out there. I mean, you and I are in the same peer group category. I've been out there a long time. You've been out there a long time. Has it gotten better for Caitlyn? I mean, 25 years ago when we went out here, it doesn't seem like it's gotten better 25 years later, right? How do we stop this cycle? What's the dissatisfaction you went through, and that you're still going through?
I would walk on a job site and the iron workers would be up on the steel and they'd whistle and everything else. I was asked what I was doing on the job site. Was I delivering something? And I'm there to bid a job or whatever. But I think it's getting better. But I really see that it's going to take a partnership with our unions and with our associations. I think it goes all the way back to high school. We have not educated high school students that they even know what the possibilities are. And I think they know better than we do how to work together. But it's going to go back to the high school and developing some pre-apprenticeship programs and getting the women excited about the industry. And then we've got to look to the unions to expand the apprenticeship programs to be inclusive of women. And they probably have to be much larger and not as close as some of them are, that only friends and family are able to get an apprenticeship position.
Mark, CEO, you didn't know I was going to call on you, but I'm going to. So talk to me from the CEO perspective. What makes you so unhappy you're willing to change? From a CEO's perspective, maybe not just yours, but like, what's going to make this leadership, like Emily said, if you had wanted women here, they'd be here, right? Like, that's just factual. Your results speak for themselves. What's going to make people unhappy so much they change now?
Well, there's either external or internal, right? For me, it's a give a shit factor. Emily says, does this matter to you? Okay, so it matters to me. What's frustrated me is other people doesn't matter to them. They figure that they can skim along the surface and basically do the minimum amount necessary for a good PR model, and that doesn't move the ball or change the culture in any fundamental way. People in my role, which I kind of wasn't even sure I should be on the panel, but actually we get to make the call.
Yeah,
right? The people who, I'm CEO, so I bring in Emily as a young 20-something head of government relations, and I took all kinds of crap for that. What's that about? And so people in my role that's where that empowerment comes in. We're going to do this. I don't care if you like it or not. We're all going to be on board this. This is the direction we're going, and the senior leadership needs to be fully committed to the cultural change. And it's just like safety or anything else. We're not compromising, and this isn't temporary, and we're not doing something superficial. We're doing something serious. And then the other one, and you can always ask Em, is, then you got to have people's back. Right? You can't just take Caitlyn and put her out on an island and say, hey, we made you superintendent. Good luck out there. See if you can make it through Survivor. You have to have people who are up the food chain who are saying, we're going to tend to this. We're going to take care of this. We're going to put in resources. We're going to care about it. We're going to follow through. Senior level leadership commitment is probably what it is. And, dissatisfaction, 75% of our workforce is going to be millennials by 2025. They want a different workplace. And I'm excited about it. I mean, I know there's been a lot of whining of the old guard, but they're like, I want something different. I want something enjoyable. I want something fair. I want something equitable. Man, it's about time. So, I'm all on board that. But then, I'm not sure that my peer group always shares that same viewpoint.
Hey, so we have a few more minutes on this question. I'm going to ask you one more question, Mark. Kimberly Caroni from the audience said, we need to realize that the unique skills women bring to the table will change how the industry operates in this new world. Tell me why this, forget about what you've got to do and what, that you feel good about it and why is this good for EBITDA? Why is this good for business? Why is this good for return on investment as a CEO for you?
Because that skill set, there's inherent skills that are extraordinary, diplomacy, empathy, things that basically that people wouldn't necessarily value as an ROI that drive major ROI. Like our industry is so transactional, but now you hear more and more relational. All bidding is relational. Owner relations, it's relationships. It used to be all hard dollar, hard ass, everybody just, fighting for every point. And I think that there's room for a broader perspective on it. And I'm not always sure that that the absence of women has served us in that regard, at least in the association. I find extraordinary payoffs at a relationship level, at a individual commitment level. The commitment of my female leaders is extraordinary. And I don't know that the idiotic stereotypes that persisted in construction have worn out, but I'm afraid there's a hangover.
Well, could I just add to that, Amy, really quickly? And
Yes,
I know
please.
Jorge's gotta want to jump in on this.
Yeah,
because
no, and
what I'm about
Dina wants to jump in.
I've learned from Jorge and all of the data in that space, which is that having a more diverse workforce, leadership team, problem solvers in a room together creates better results for a business, as long as those people feel like they belong.
Right.
So if you have 5 men and you throw a woman in the mix and you go, all right, we're done, and she doesn't feel like she belongs, and she doesn't feel like she can contribute, you're not going to get good results. In fact, you might even get worse results. But this is what I've learned. When you have a mix, a diverse group of people in a room working together, solving your problems, you get a better mix of ideas and you end up with better ideas, as long as you make sure you created an environment where all of the people in that room, no matter how different they look or feel, know that they belong there and can bring their whole selves to that meeting. So it's just not enough to throw some women in a room and say, problem solved. Right. So with that, I just want to let Jorge speak, because he's really the expert on that. He's who taught me that.
Go ahead, Dina. You had your hand up at one point.
Yeah, thanks, Jorge. I appreciate that. When we talk about, I've long said, if we can get the youth into our industry, the diversity will follow. They have a whole different view about diversity and inclusion than we do. And in that survey I mentioned earlier, they found that 37% of contractors are engaged in a career building program at a high school level, a college level, or a pre-apprenticeship level. So, or things like Build California. That's really this comprehensive marketing campaign to recruit youth. We have to focus on that, but then we have to figure out how to retain and elevate quickly, and then the results follow. And then I think one more thing I just wanted to add was, it is different today. When I started in construction 20 plus years ago, I was always the only room, and now some of my best friends are running multi-million-dollar construction companies, some of the largest construction companies, great talented women. I never thought construction was an industry for me, because even growing up in it, there were no women. I didn't even know it was a career path, and my dad invited me in. But now there's Donna's, there's Caitlin's, there's Emily's, there's Dina's, and I think the young women can see a pathway. So that is different, and we need to build on that traction.
The only thing I'm going to add, because Dina's been dropping the wisdom on the data here. I love it. But to build on what Emily said, I'm going to take you back 100 years. And let's say women were accepted. Let's say women were trained, developed, retained, and they were in leadership positions. I just want to share with you that the diversity, equity, and inclusion world, or the cottage industry, it's about a $2.1 billion industry. And if Mark, you talk about ROI, just think about the money that has been spent teaching men how to be empathetic, how to be more diverse. We could have had that all along. We could have had the collaboration, the empathy. We could have been having a different conversation right now. But let's step back and realize that most companies were never designed for women. first of all, right? They were designed for men, and there's shows on TV that just amplify that. And so, and when Dina says it is different, it is different. And I'll tell you the thing that it's really different is that we're challenging men to be part of this conversation. You know, I would love to sit on a panel like this when we're asking men how to solve the problems that have been created, not asking women to tell us, like, what do you think we should do? And that, I think, would be a step change. And I'll get into talking about some of the other companies, what they have done intentionally about it. But that would be one of them that I think really resonates to me, that I'm sitting here, the only, you know, Mark, I know you're a man, but, you know, you're the CEO of and I'm the only guy in the panel, and I'm thinking, man, we got to stop this. We got to put CEOs right here and ask them, you know, you've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why hasn't it changed? Tell us, what are you going to do? So just a thought.
You know what's funny about that, Jorge? And then we'll move to the next set of questions. Every time, I agree with you, Dina, that there are more and more women. However, at the highest levels of leadership, it gets less and less and less and less. You know that now, right? I mean, and so anytime I sit, interestingly enough, whenever I sit with a fireside chat, I've just done one with Sala Eckhart from Microsoft or Amanda Gillespie, inevitably whoever does the organization of that, they want to say 2 women leaders. And I say, why do we have to say 2 women leaders? I feel like we're both subject matter experts on a panel. Who cares that we're women right now? And I said, the second, this is true, you know how I feel about this panel, the second you write 2 women leaders, half the people stopped listening to the whatever the subject matter expertise conversation was after that. And they think we're just going to talk about being women, as if we run around all day thinking about the fact that we're women. So I do think it has to change, and we need champions. I will say, look, you want to talk about dissatisfaction? I'm 50 years old. This year alone, the number of, if I couldn't even count the number of microaggressions as a vice president, that, you know, like when I deal with a lot of people around this world, lots of different companies all the time, the number of microaggressions that I get on a weekly basis range from, Amy, if you've ever been on a job site, like gets said to me at least once a week, and something like, why are you so, I had somebody go, why are you so angry? I said, I'm not angry. I'm actually a subject matter expert, passionate about what I'm talking about. I'm from New York and I talk with my hands. That's what people from my culture look like when they get excited. Every single week, I could count at least 10 that I get every single week. And by the way, I stop the meeting, I call it out, because even at this level, Caitlyn, I don't want to make you feel worse. Hopefully by the time you get to the VP level, it's better. Because you know why? I'm not going to let them keep calling these microaggressions to me and pretending it didn't happen. So hopefully they stop saying those things by the time you're soon going to be, and you and Emily are vice presidents by then. I don't, maybe you are a vice president already, Emily. But so I think the dissatisfaction has to be felt by the people in the space and felt by the leadership in their pockets, right? Like that has to happen. And we have to see what's possible. So there's some unhappiness. Somebody needs 100 electricians. You want to have diversity and perspective. We all know that, like, you know, we've all had our as Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. We've all been punched in the face a bunch of times. But what is really possible in a vision here? What do you think, you know, where did we come from? Let's thinking about where we came from the past. What's a vision of the future look like if we're successful at this? Let's sort of take let's paint a picture for the people that are out there learning about this right now. Caitlyn, since I picked on you and said, you know, next year when you're a vice president, hopefully, tell me how that's working.
I like that career goal right there.
Gotta have goals.
Oh yeah. You know, moving forward, I would love to see the day where a handful of women can walk onto a job site and it's not instantly pushed that, number one, either you stand out, or number two, like, oh, there's another woman, you should go talk to her. I don't want that. I just want to be recognized, and I want everyone in the field to be recognized that she's a great superintendent. And like you said, I don't want to be the best female superintendent. I don't want to be the most organized female superintendent. I want to be your best superintendent. I want to be your most organized superintendent. Drop the female. I don't want that type of recognition. I don't want that type of attention. Not that I want to blend in with the boys, but I want to blend in with the industry. I want to look like and act like I belong there without having to be one of the boys. So I'm hoping that's the direction we go in the next few years.
Donna, you're getting good kudos, by the way. I don't know if you're noticing in the chat. People love hearing about the fact that we need to do a better job to make sure women know that there's opportunities available. What is the future? If you have to paint it, what's a little bit of a roadmap and how do we get to that vision?
Again, I think it comes back to the partnership with the union and Mark with the associations. We've got to be out there pushing to be all inclusive and recognize what the opportunities are. And we need to broadcast what the opportunities are. There's no conversation, or it's just starting now, of what is available for women in the industry. And I think that's the beginning that has to change.
What does your world look like when it's changed? Imagine what your workforce looks like when you have 30% women, 40% women. What does it look like for your organization?
It's going to be a tough one for demolition, but we're doing it. And the possibilities are there. I think we're going to get rid of some of the old guard in the next few years who have put up the resistance. But they put up a resistance even having to punish on their job. So, it's sort of have to roll with it. But I think there's going to be more women in foremen, supervisory positions, more engineers. And it works for us. If it can work for us in demolition, I think it can work for any company, but it's a whole different mindset.
Agreed. Jorge, again, from other industries, what is possible for us? Paint a little bit of the vision.
Yeah, so I would tell you a couple things. One thing that I learned when I was with Kraft was that, and someone said it, and at Northwestern Mutual, they enhanced it a little bit, but if you've ever known someone that's gone through an organ transplant or yourself had gone through it, you know how hard doctors and the patient works to get the body ready in order to bring that organ into the body. If the body is not ready, it will just spit it out, right? It will not accept it. And I think when I hear Caitlyn talking about her story, and thank you for sharing, Caitlyn, I think that environment was not ready for a Caitlyn. And, the tragedy there is that Caitlyn's working her butt off, and maybe she was only running at 80% because the other 20%, she's having her shield, right? Shielding all this other stuff off. And just think of what could happen if the environment was ready and she's running at 100%. Think about what that world would look like. That's the first thing. So I learned that from them, and it was more about in the inclusion side of it. At Northwestern Mutual, the aha moment, and I shared it earlier, was when we had and actually it was called the Women's Caucus, and we brought in a bunch of women leaders, and we were asking them, how can we make financial services better? And one of the women said, when you stop asking us how to fix your problems. And the room got really quiet, and someone said, gentlemen, we're better than this. We are better than this. And sometimes as men, I think we need to step up and be that one guy that can stop those microaggressions. And that's what the folks at Northwestern Mutual started working on, and unleashed just amazing, the recruitment, the development. Everyone started seeing, someone like Caitlyn or someone like Dina, you in your leadership position as not the woman CEO or the women superintendent. They were just strong performers, right? It was fascinating. And then from an Allstate perspective, I tell you the commitment, the bold commitment in making a statement around what were going to be the priorities. And from the CEO, and I was looking at the chat, and someone said it has to be from the CEO. When the CEO can show the priorities, there's a lot of gurus that teach you how to time management. And they say, show me your calendar and I'll show you where you spend your time. Well, asking a company, show me your priorities and I'll tell you what's important to you. If bringing in women into this industry is important to a company, you're going to see it in their priorities. And people will be able to speak to it, amplify it, be ambassadors about it. So those three things that really, really stick out, that as you asked the question, come to mind. But it's almost like that commitment, right, that's needed.
Jorge, I've got to say this part, right? So
Mhm.
it's my biggest pet peeve, belonging, right? We can definitely get women to come.
Mhm.
So this is going to sound strange, but
Mhm.
definitely you have to be pretty brave to come to this industry, right? Why is it that if we're getting the bodies ready, that every organization, the classes they teach are things like, to the women there, learn how to use your voice, learn how to speak up. It's like, wait, what? You just disempowered me before I even walked in the door to everybody around. That's the only programming we have at these companies sometimes for, engagement with women. Do you think women show up to this industry that don't speak their minds and don't know how to be heard and aren't like, by the way, Caitlyn and Emily and we're laughing, right? Because it's like, you don't need help actually speaking up. What do we do to get the body ready for not just, and I know we're not all outspoken, but
Yeah.
certainly a large percentage of us are that are in this space. It's not easy to stick it out here and be here or even come in the beginning. So how do we get the body ready? It cannot just be with, you should ask somebody to make sure that they back you when it's your idea, or you should lean in and say, I know you've probably thought of this idea before. Why do we have to do that? I have plenty of unique ideas that no one has thought of before they come out of my mouth. Like, why do we teach people that that's the way, that's how women work within an organization? How do we change that?
So I'll tell you, so the Neuro Leadership Institute has done a really nice job of laying out what are the 3 things that someone has to consider. And I said one of them is the priorities. Then there's the habits, and then there's the systems. I will tell you, if you go into the systems, the reason, and maybe I should stop saying get the body ready. I should say you should look into the systems, right? Because this is what it translates to. Most systems are not set up to actually attract, recruit, and especially if you look at your job description, at our job descriptions as an industry, there are some companies that are really nimble and really progressive, done a wonderful job. So don't get me wrong, okay? And I don't want to paint everyone with the same brush, but there are still companies that are utilizing job descriptions with titles of positions back in the 70s and the 80s. And it's because it works, so let's keep on doing it. And I'll tell you, and if you're not hip to it, Bain Consultant did a study back in 2014. And when a woman decides to join a certain company, they've been interviewing you. And they already know that they're going to be a leader. It's the systems that stop that woman or selects out of being in leadership because of the environment it's being created. So to answer your question about, I tell you, I mean, it is a side note. I was with the Catalyst Group, right? One of the largest non-for-profits for women. And the 2 women they were interviewing me, and I made the mistake of saying women need more confidence. Okay, look at your eyes. Look at your eyes, right? These 2 women literally almost physically jumped out of their seats and just like grabbed me by the neck. And that was the moment I learned exactly what you were talking about, Amy. And
Right.
That is, this issue is, and this is why I circle back. And when we say get the body ready, I say we have to stop saying that diversity is only about women and people of color. Men are part of this conversation.
Yes.
And because when they feel like they're part of this for so long, we have pushed men out of this conversation. So they say, it's not about me. So if you think about what you said earlier, the minute you say it's 2 women are going to talk about leadership, half the room just disengages, right? I'm curious how many people signed up. And when they saw that this was going to be a panel for women, how many men didn't show up? I don't know how many men are on the call right now. And if you are, thank you for being here.
Give us a little shout out if you're here. Say hi if you're here. Put hi in the chat if you're here. So
please.
You,
so I would tell you that I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the systems. And if we do it, and if we do it right, guess what? Men benefit from it. Just think about maternity leave. Paternity leave would not have been a thing if we weren't thinking about maternity, right? And men benefit from it. And that's, I think, what we have to also remind ourselves from an ROI perspective. Sorry she got me fired up.
Sorry, no, but for sure. Yeah. And by the way, I think that's the thing. I love when you said that when you use the words like overconfident, Caitlyn and Emily, you guys both laughed, and Dina too. I mean,
that they're not confident. Yeah.
Like, sorry, that you're not confident.
Yeah.
It's like, how many of these things do we just need to stop doing and flip on their heads? Like, tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I got something, Amy. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's so important how we do it, right? I would never in a million years tell a young lady coming in my organization, like, be softer. But I do have trust with my male peers and my male people on my team that I can point out things and say, when that customer was talking about what a bulldog I was in contract negotiations, was I really a bulldog, or was I just a woman who was negotiating a contract that he didn't expect? And so I think when you have trusting relationships with male peers, you can help educate them on things they don't even, the implicit biases, right? Things that we don't even know we're doing. The fact that you tend to mentor people that look like you or think like you. Well, that, when all the leadership in construction is white males, they're going to tend to just gravitate towards mentoring white males. If we can help them be aware of these things in a trusted environment where there's not blame in our game, it's just how do we lead the change going forward? I think we get so much traction in that respect.
And Dina, I think you're spot on. Sorry, Mark, for jumping in. It's like jump rope, right? It's my turn. I think you're spot on, because we as individuals can't see our own biases. And we walk around thinking, God, didn't he hear himself? And the answer is no. It's because we're programmed this way. And all of us have a brain, so we're biased. But that's what you're talking about, Dina, is that we have to be able to say, Mark, did you know that in every single one of your meetings, you say guys, and your entire team is made up of women? And that's just an example that right now, you hear people talk that way. And we've been raised, some of us have been raised, and it's been okay. Even the women say guys. And so I think we need to not just give grace, but understand also the science and the art at the same time.
Bring it home, Mark, for us.
That's a lot of don't do that. Now I want to do, let's do this. Okay.
Yes.
We can get all wound around the axle about all the things that we ought not to do. Now I'm going to bring the CEO model, which is a strategy to solve the problem. What we need in the industry, and it's not only for women, but in general, is we need to professionalize career development. You bring people in and it's so random. I mean, most companies, even big ones, got HR people and they basically go around putting out fires. What we need talent development. What I see in some of the more progressive companies is that, so, you have a female who comes out of an engineering program and ordinarily going to go onto the engineering side and end up PE, PM, whatever. But there's another track they could take, Caitlyn's track. If the company's smart enough, there's a lot of people who are becoming superintendents who are college graduates. So there's a whole new group of people who could be put into that track who didn't do, I was 10 years a carpenter, 10 years an iron worker, blah, blah, blah. The old model is that you can run work with a different profile coming from behind, but you have to have a career development program that looks like that. Same thing with foremen. Yesterday, we had our fearless field leader, UConn's fearless field leader. We had like 150 people sign up. I'll bet you there was probably maybe 2 women out of 150. So all the owners here, all the people who are watching, the operating engineers are on here. Charlie, thanks. How about we start referring people to a career track model that promotes leadership? I'm not talking about high school. I'm not talking about craft. I'm saying if we want to change it, it's mid-level. The biggest bang for the buck to me is superintendent and foreman, general foreman, slotting people and doing career development and making that a success metric. That has to be it. Like, we have to stop doing all those things, but all we'll have is a kinder, gentler industry, but we won't have a strategy to push the numbers and the participation and the capability up. And then you end up with outliers like, the people on this panel who just pop up and got, they just had to brutally push to get there instead of the system being designed to give us a better result. So I absolutely, Amy, that is possible. And that's the kind of investment that'll pay off exponentially, but you've got a lot of head scratching going, well, that seems like a lot of work, seems like a lot of money. Yeah, so is safety. So is everything else we decided to change in this business. And look how that worked out. All right, I'll get off my soapbox.
I was just gonna help bring it home here. I think that I'm not rolling my eyes when you say kinder, gentler industry. It's called an industry that's a better place for everybody to work. And it's called inclusivity. When you create part of the problem with our industry is people don't currently want to work in it. It's part of why we're having this panel. So having a more inclusive industry, everybody, including the next generation, will want to work in an industry that's more inclusive. where people feel like they belong, kinder, gentler. So I think it's like this combination, but both are equally important. Getting people into the industry requires things as basic but as difficult as a language change and
Yes.
so much more. It also requires, okay, once we're here, once we've got these talented women and a more diverse workforce here, what's our plan to make sure that they can rise and succeed here for themselves and ultimately for your company, for our companies?
You know, it's funny. Somebody just said, Ayanna Adams, how are we going to measure success year over year to achieve the goal of, she put in quotes, kinder, gentler industry? I think, listen, the vision you painted, Mark, is not for how do we get more diverse. That's actually how do you have a better company? How do you get more
Yes.
people to be on a talent track? How do you get more people to have career development? You just happen to be looking at it a non-biased development path of it. Everybody benefits from it, right? I mean, you could have engineers that are men that want to go into the superintendent role that weren't going to be considered. But I think if you think about it, that what's good for a woman, a person of different color, a person from a different sexual orientation, for us to just be more inclusive, everybody wins, men too. Like, listen, we're joking right now. If you don't think the backlash of like, well, I'm a white male in the industry now, I can't get ahead at all. Like, I hear it every day. So, that gets said too. So by the way, it helps them as well. If you feel like you're excluded because now you're a white male over 50 in the space, great talent development and understanding how to capture your value at an organization benefits everybody. Right. So I think it's good, Mark. What you're saying is it's not just about like when they get there, they have to feel good. We have to figure out how we're going to bring them in. Right. There is that diversity. Where are we going to go get these people from? Listen, it just was COVID. I know you all know that. Like, there are plenty of people out of work right now that have skills that we need in the space, right? If you think about it, like plenty of people got laid off, plenty of people were stuck in their homes, lots of digital native people. There's lots of technology most people don't know how to use in this space. I can say that part, right? There's lots of lawyers that aren't working necessarily, or bankers or whatever, right? And physical jobs too that don't have the place to go now. We have an amazing opportunity for the vision of our organizations to bring those people in right now that are out of work, that we know don't have jobs, and understand how we're going to keep them in this business, not just for a day, but for forever, so that we have growth paths for them where they don't have to worry about the fact that there's a padlock on the women's restroom out on the job site, Caitlyn, right? That you can't remember the combination because only the women are, and everybody has it anyway. They all, like those things are ridiculous. We got to figure out how to make better living arrangements for everybody. And then nobody acts like animals because they're better for everyone, right?
Preach.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think that's vision, right? We're talking about, like, we all know that this could be better for everyone in our space. Because, by the way, we don't have young people here either, male or female, right? Like, they don't want to come here for all the same reasons that we just said. Sometimes women don't want to get here. Yes, exponentially worse. Sometimes, depending on your diversity in the companies you go to, sometimes better. But so now let's talk about, we all know things are bad. And I know, Ayanna, whoever you are, somebody should hire you. She's like, that was Mark saying it back. We want track numbers. Yes, Mark, we should make sure that this doesn't just go on talk. When you create these programs, by the way, at companies I've worked for, they get paid on the number of people they're bringing in for interviews, how many make it to the last rounds, how many, I know managers in Netflix as an example. You know what they did at FX. The guy said, I want women directors. They first brought him a whole bunch. He goes, I'm not even looking at them. I told you, go get me 10 women directors. That's what I'm picking from this time. Well, we can't find them. He said, they're out there. Go find them. And they did. They had a number they wanted to hit. He got paid on that as a rule. And they were doing them. Their numbers went through the roof on how well that channel did. Same thing at lots of companies in our space have. And again, like incentives to make things more diverse, right? All the way around, whatever that is, metrics of we want to reach these things. Because to Emily's point, if you're not there, you didn't want to get there, or the system wasn't set up to achieve the possibilities, right? Like one of the two things. So I think the vision part, it has to be measurable, and we've got to get somewhere. So by the way, my mom was the dean of a college. When I tell her about the stuff I go through here, she just turned 75. She cries. She's like, I wish it would have been better for you. Like she used to say, don't let the blonde hair fool you. I said, please, I'm still the blonde at the table in high heels, the only one. She's like, I wish it would have gotten better. So on that note, How do we take a step of action now? We know that we are all dissatisfied, both internally and externally, owners and participants alike. We know that there's something better out there. It's possible. We see it everywhere else in lots of other places. And by the way, this world has changed a lot in the last 2 years, if we haven't learned anything. And what do we do for our first concrete steps of action to overcome the resistance, right? I think that's important. And by the way, think of your questions because we're going there next. But Donna, let's start with you. What are our first concrete steps of action we can take for change?
I think I want to speak to the field, and I think it takes someone, the HR person can go along, but someone that has a working knowledge of the field needs to get out of the project, reassess what the tasks are. So that's the first step. And we're so used to just calling the hall and ordering a roller operator or a laborer. We need to talk to that person. We need to figure out what their skill sets are, where they want to be. And then you match the two. It's amazing if you sit here and think, well, there's nothing that a woman can do on the job site. But when you start breaking that job down, there is so much that they can do. There's a world of possibilities, but that first step is go out and assess what's going on your projects.
Donna, I remember you telling me that you guys looked at the jobs that are out there in the field and said, yeah, some of these jobs might not be the easiest one for, depending on the physicality of the woman doing it.
Sure.
But there's these other jobs that are actually better for somebody who had a different kind of physicality. And you did a real assessment of that, right?
Yeah, we had an ongoing project at SFO, and the ceiling is 40 foot high. So our workers are up in these scissor lifts. We always have the possibility that someone, the electrician or the comm people, did not create the air gaps for all the comm wire and conduits that need to be removed. So we put a young woman who was, you could tell just by talking to her, she was meticulous. She really cared about the detail. And we put her up in that scissor lift, and she followed all these, it's just a mishmash of cables and conduits. We did not have one mishap on that job. She was so meticulous. And the guys that were cutting behind her, they just had their mouths open because every one of them had made a mistake before, and it gets too costly.
That's fantastic. And Emily, let's talk a little bit about concrete steps of action.
Well, I think one thing that companies could do, I'll give 2 examples, but I'll try to do them quickly.
No, take your time. Take your time.
Okay. I think one thing that companies can do is, if they have the capacity, or UConn has been offering some workshops, but evaluate the biases, the unconscious biases that exist within your company policies that you're not aware of. As you're hiring people, the resume process, the onboarding process, there are some biases that exist there that you're not aware of, and you can change that. You can bring people on that are experts in this area that can help you, that can evaluate the policies of your company, and can help you bring change if you're really dedicated to that. I think that's one important, really super concrete step that companies can take. It's a real investment, and you're also leading by example. You're showing your employees that this is something that matters to your company enough to actually invest in the changes. But for me, one thing that really sticks out, when I came to United Contractors, we're not a construction company, and I know that. We're a trade association, and it's a bit of a different environment. But when I came on, I was still going out into the world of the construction industry on behalf of the construction industry every day. And I was 24 when Mark hired me, Mark Breslin. And Mark said to me, I didn't ask, and Mark said to me, I'm just going to give you a little bit of advice. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm not 24 anymore. That was definitely not yesterday. He said, people are going to ask your age. It's none of their business. Do not tell them. And he said, the second thing is, it was 3 pieces of advice. He said, the second thing is, when you walk into a room for a long time, you're going to be the only woman and the youngest person in the room. Speak up. When you've got something to say it in the first 15 minutes if you can, because otherwise they're going to ask you to start taking the minutes. And then he said, and don't put up with any bullshit. You don't have to. Just come to me and I'll help you out. I've got your back. And those 3 things, you know, then he sends me out in the world to just go do what he hired me to do, which is advocacy. And so that was really empowering for me. And I often wonder, and like through the Me Too movement, all of that, I felt like there was a really missed discussion around what kind of support are women getting from men, from their male bosses? You know, we've talked a lot about this is not just a women problem and we can't solve it because you can't punch up. What support are you getting from this predominantly male leaders to empower women to go out into the world and be really great at their jobs, which is why you hired them? So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying mentor these women. You've hired them, you think they're capable of these jobs, mentor them sincerely in every step of the way, which means, you know, that doesn't mean stand in front of them and tell them about, you know, the good old days. It means walk beside them and support them and show them and teach them and really invest so that they can succeed. You know, those 3 things he said to me, I think about them all the time because he recognized, hey, I know you look different and I know you're going to look different out there. And it might be intimidating and you might not feel like you belong, but I'm your boss. I'm the only one that can determine that. And I'm telling you, you do belong. And that really helped me. And it helped me do a better job for United Contractors. I was better at my job because of that, because it allowed me to really show up with all my skills and talents.
So that's a phenomenal story. And it's basically saying, when you get to these places where you hire women, you need to be their mentor and their sponsor. Those are different, right? Like they need to put their butts out on the line for you so that they know you're going to have a hard time and they need to articulate that to you and have your back, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Really well said. Well done, Mark, by the way. Good on you. Jorge, I'm going to you next for concrete steps of action.
Yeah. So, you know, I was writing down because there's a lot of great stuff on the chat as well. Someone said, practice the golden rule. And I would tell you that we have to practice the platinum rule, especially with this conversation that Mark had with Emily. We have to treat people the way they want to be treated. We have to treat women not the way I, as a man, want to be treated. I need to find out how Dina wants to be treated, how Angelica wants to be treated before I can step that way. And again, there's a place and time for the golden rule. And we can have another session on this a little bit later, but that really stuck out. Vicki O'Leary has done some phenomenal work with the Iron Workers, and she challenges men to be that one guy, to have the courage, be bold about stepping up and supporting, advocating, and more importantly, stopping the microaggressions that take place. And I give her a lot of credit for that. There's a wonderful TED Talk if you research it and type in good people. And the premise behind that is this, is that we all think we're good people. So guess what? People in these companies think, hey, I'm doing it right. Challenge yourself to being a better person every day. Instead of just like, I'm a good person, so I don't need to get involved. No, start with the premise that you want to be better today. And the last 3, I'll say this, is that what we do here at Granite, we're very specific about saying, you have to be able to notice so that you can make the necessary shift. And what I mean by that is this. Notice who's the quietest person in the room. Notice who's the quietest person in a Zoom meeting who hasn't talked, and go out of your way and give them a voice. The second thing, the person who looks or feels most different, notice that person, whether it's gender, ethnicity, or just they're new to the company, and create the environment, you'll like this, Amy, to have them feel like they belong, right? But notice it. And then the final one I'll share with you is this, is that regardless of age, regardless of gender, make sure that the person and you make sure that they can contribute from day one. And you, to your point again, Amy, about sponsorship, that you set up someone like Caitlyn up to be successful, as opposed to, like Mark said earlier, just throw her out there. And when we do that, and it's in it, you know what it comes? It comes from that golden rule. So I was thrown out there. So I'm going to throw Caitlyn out there. And that is, it just hit me, insight, right? It just hit me that that's the problem with the golden rule.
Yeah.
Right? I know where it comes from. Trust me, I have conviction. I know where it comes from.
Treat
but
them
in these
better.
situations, yeah, it's like, be human. Someone said it in the thing is, be human. And I think those are some tangible things that I can tell you. I mean, there's other things like, look at your, like, why do we use like the brotherhood of this or men at work sign? I mean, there's some really like low hanging fruit. Like there's men and women at work in a job site. I saw some today driving on Highway 1.
There's humans,
and,
people.
Yes, yeah. So anyway.
You know what? By the way, Jorge, I'm inspired by that because I feel like it's true. I was the one that put the golden rule in there. And actually,
Did you?
Yeah, but you know what's great about that? I'm never going to say it again because I feel like the golden rule is one of the reasons why we have such horrible women on women crime in our industry. It's not just men on women. Like women on women crime has to stop. Like a woman that's like, get ready. I had to deal with it. You got to deal with it. Good luck. Good luck, sister. Or like, just we always think there's only one seat at the table. We could build a table with each other. Like we could build a whole brand new table. You know, like there's not one seat and like Caitlyn replaces me when I retire. And that's not how it works.
No.
There's plenty of seats. So
Yes.
all of us women have to grab a seat, pull it over, scooch over, and let lots of other women participate. Because you're right. It's not the golden rule. It's the platinum rule. I'm never going to say that again, actually.
Which is treat others, say it again, Jorge, treat others the way they want to be treated.
Treated, yes. And you know, and the problem with that, the one that I've said, we're in our comfort zone when we use the golden rule. And it's difficult to get out of our comfort zone. So to go talk to Dina, hey, Dina, you know what? I've noticed that you do some pretty good work here. Am I recognizing you the right way? What other development do you need? Sometimes you got to get out of that comfort zone, because if you live in the golden rule, well, I did it this way, you go do it.
Right.
You know? So anyway.
Caitlyn, first concrete steps of action. Tell us what's so important right now that we can do.
I feel like I want to bounce like all these stories that I have that Emily and Jorge and everyone's been talking about. I have to tell one, and then I'll do my one concrete step. When I was at Turner, I was working in downtown San Francisco, and I had a team. I was a superintendent. I had a female project engineer and a female project manager. And I had our ceiling subcontractor step on site, and he said, this is the most intimidating job that he's ever stepped on. And I said, welcome to my life. This is how I feel every day. Yeah. And so part of that is put yourself in someone else's shoes. How do you think they feel? If they're nervous, if they're not speaking up, the first conference that I spoke to, I made the first 2 rows put on safety vests because suits make me nervous. Safety vests, that is my comfort zone. And nice. So it's all about, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and figuring out what makes them comfortable to have the conversations. My concrete step for action would be when you're sitting at a table, when you're having a conversation with someone and someone else says something and they do not get heard, they're not listened to, and it seems so simple, stopping the conversation right there and then and saying, hey, did you hear so-and-so's idea? They had a great idea. Can you elaborate? Can you tell us more? Giving them a voice, giving them that one opportunity that what they said wasn't wrong, what they said wasn't discounted for any reason, just having that moment for them.
I love that, Caitlyn. Dina, what is your concrete step of action? Tell us, what are you doing as a CEO in the space?
So my notes on how to answer this question are eerily mirror Mark's comments earlier, and that is making culture our #1 priority at Royal is the best way that I can take concrete steps. And we've been doing that over the last several years, in addition to, as I mentioned in my intro, building people is our #1 strategy before building relationships and before building projects. And we are creating a very intentional process and system to build people. So we're defining the roles, we're defining the growth path without names. without genders. And we are creating these systems so that our young people know, how do I grow at Royal? What are my steps? And then we're matching them through feedback with training and development that will get them to where they want to go. And so then it takes out of the equation the implicit bias of mentoring or just happening to promote this guy because you like him and you notice him, or and so I think what Jorge was saying earlier about the priorities, habits, and systems, I wrote that down because without realizing it, that's what we were doing. We made culture our priority, and now we're creating the systems to really implement it intentionally. And so as CEO, I think I can first affect my microcosm and my ecosystem, as you say, Amy, but then also what am I doing out in the industry? So like Donna, very involved in construction industry associations. I'll be president of AGC next year, AGC of California. And so, you know, UConn, us pushing UConn to do this panel, us pushing AGC with their diversity, equity, and inclusion task force that's turning out concrete steps that contractors can use, pushing my peers in the industry because I have access to them through these associations. That's what I can keep doing. And I think that's why we're starting to see the change. People are asking for this. Diversity is not a word we use as a drinking game in associations anymore. It's something we're actually doing to take concrete steps. And that's why I'm excited for the young ladies entering the industry right now. I feel like we are at such a time where we're actually taking action and not just talking.
Awesome. I think, Mark, I didn't get a concrete step of action. Do you want to put a quick one in there?
Oh, I think I was covering it with the career
All right.
development model. You know, the only one is I would also say take a risk. You know, from the top down. We told the story of Emily. You know, somebody put Caitlyn in that first spot, right? Someone, you know, Dina. Like, there's not a person who is trying to enact significant culture change that doesn't anticipate that resistance, right? It's kind of like acknowledging that resistance as a temporary barrier. That's how I, you know, you gave us the little formula. Well, it has to exceed the resistance, is a conviction that the resistance will fall, that you don't respect it. You mow it over, you work it out, you explain it. Like, there's a million different ways to break it down, but you don't acknowledge it as a condition of this industry. And for me, that's my MO all the way, and I'm trying to push that all the way out, and the people on this panel are the best examples of it. So I think their voices are better than mine in that regard, for sure.
I think every voice should be heard, including yours. And I would tell you that I've actually never taken notes or meeting minutes or scribed ever. I sit there for 25 minutes. Great advice. I just don't say a word, and I won't ever do it. I've never done it, by the way. Good advice that you gave. I would say, like, by the way, my first concrete step of action, because I'm constantly dissatisfied, by the way, and I talk about the future all the time and what I do for a living, but I think I'm kind of tired. Like, by the way, I think we need programs for young people in high school and all that stuff, but there are plenty of women that are coming back to work from having kids that we should be targeting that have amazing skills. And I've never heard one company in our space say, we're targeting moms that want to come back to work and work in our space that don't have jobs. Like, how come that's not something? Like, how come that's not a thing? Like, by the way, my daughter's 13. It's going to take her quite a long time. She loves math. She's a mathlete. But like, if we're waiting for her to populate this like space, we're dead. I'll be my mom crying for when my daughter is here. And that'll be a problem. So my first concrete step of action is go find some women right now that are out of work, that have amazing skills for this space, that want to come back from their maternity leave or having babies, or by the way, my executive assistant, who is really my partner, because I never had a mentor, has been with me for 15 years. I hired her on the interview process when her kid was going back to kindergarten, her third child. I said, I can't live without you. You have to come work for me. She was like, I didn't even know if I was really going to get a job. And we've been together for 15 years ever since. And she's truly, really my partner. So there are plenty of women coming back where their kids go to kindergarten. Let's try to make programs for them. We're going to open it up for questions and answers. Now, we do have a bunch of questions. So here we go. Why does Granite say, Jorge, inclusive diversity while other companies use D&I or DEI?
So, wow, that's a great question. And so let me answer it this way. So I've realized going from 3 different companies that what we did in those companies, you can't like plug and play what you did at other companies. You have to do a diagnostic of what's going on here at Granite. And so one of the things that dawned on me, and I think Dina, you did a great job of kicking us off, because I think, no, let me say, I believe we do have an amazing industry that has tremendous opportunity. And we just have to do something with it, like how bold we are when we build bridges, when we do projects. We get really excited. We could do the same thing in this space. But the reason why we did that, we realized that we don't celebrate the diversity that we already have. For instance, we think about the diversity that we need. And so all of a sudden, you don't celebrate it. So we realized that we had multitude of diversity dimensions. We had men who were raising their kids. We had women, in running big rigs. I mean, it was just something that we thought about. But then what we realized also is that when you have diversity and inclusion, you almost give people kind of like, if you're, my kids, my son ate the hamburger, left the French fries. My daughter ate the French fries, didn't eat the hamburger. So if you go diversity and you don't do inclusion, it's not going to work. Or if you do inclusion and everyone is all happy, but without the diversity, that doesn't work. So we said, you know what, we need to be inclusive of all the diversity that we have at Granite today, tomorrow, and into the future. Now, all of a sudden, we don't have to worry about that person on a job site that says, I know that I'm Latino, but I also want to let you know I'm gay. And all of a sudden people freak out because now they came out. Because we're inclusive of all the diversity, that's not a thing to us anymore, right? That's the message that we're trying to amplify around inclusive diversity. Belonging, equity, justice, you call it whatever, is output of strong, inclusive diversity practices.
Right.
The systems, to go back to the systems. Now what you need to do is work on the habits. What habits do you do on a daily basis to live into inclusive diversity?
Hey, Caitlyn, a question for you. If you could change one thing in the field today, what would it be? What would you tell the CEO of the company, the number one thing they need to do today to make the field more inclusive?
Oh God, start with the conversations. We have so many conversations that end at the superintendent level that don't make their way out to the field. We just did a whole thing on diversity and inclusion at Dome Construction, and we are working our way down to the carpenters and laborers. Think about it. A carpenter and a laborer are the face of your company on the job site. They're the ones interacting with the chief engineers, with the buildings. And if we're not having the conversations with them, the conversation isn't going all the way through the company. It's just stopping.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's another one. What's your view on when men say there are just things men can do that women can't? Dina, I'm going to you and Donna on this one. What do we do about that? What are your thoughts on it?
What's that old quote? I do everything Fred Astaire does, but backwards and in high heels. I think when it comes to the field, I think that's probably where the issue comes up more often, because there isn't anything men can do in the project management estimating world that women can't. So you're really talking about physical limitations, I think, when people bring that comment up. And I think Donna spoke to it very well, that it's how we design our job descriptions and our roles. So break up some duties. I've got some operators that are great at a backhoe and, not at a drill rig. So, okay, I don't put them on the drill rig. So if, there's, as electricians, if a woman can't lift 100 pounds, big deal. Have the man lift 100 pounds and put the woman on the skill set she's good
Absolutely.
at. We do it all the time in office settings. We play to people's strengths and we shore up their weaknesses, and that's called being a team. So how do we design that in our field positions as well?
I think it's my rugby days that everyone's body was different and they all played a role on the team. Like there were very tall women, very stocky women, fast girls, like Donna, what's your answer to that question?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, anytime you drive by a road construction, who are you going to see doing traffic control or water control on a project? We tend to pigeonhole a woman there because they won't get hurt. And there's no job satisfaction. No guy would put up with that for very long. Why do we expect a woman to do it? And I think one of the keys also, as we transition with a lot of our foremen and superintendents retiring, is we make sure that we are pairing these women with a foreman or superintendent that is willing to realize what their strengths are and help them progress just like they would any other guy. But you got to find those people within your company.
Right.
They're there, and it's the new generation in construction.
Hey, Charlie Lavery, I love your question. What are your thoughts about dealing with childcare as a barrier to employment? Let me take one swipe and then I'll let somebody else answer that. It's one of the reasons why I love industrialized construction. We don't have enough labor right now. You move some work to the factories and you're able to do prefabrication because we have less workforce, a different type of skilled labor in a factory, and you can co-locate your daycare, your college life, your gym. Your life can be co-located around a factory instead of out where if you're in charge of childcare, whether you're a man or a woman, you don't know one day if you're gonna be 45 minutes from your house or 3 hours from your house on a day or 20 minutes from your house. So I would say like my biggest thing for that is we have to invest in industrialized construction. Having a fab shop is a great way to bring people of diverse populations. And especially if you co-locate a daycare near it, inside it, a discount for it, something like that. It's helps both. Again, anything that's good for women is great for men too. Lots of men do childcare as well. I know that for a fact as I traveled the world and my ex-husband took my daughter places and he was in construction, by the way. Anyone else want to take a crack at the childcare one before we, was that good for that?
I think you have to ask the question right up front. We do a lot of night work. We do a lot of weekend work. If you can't work nights, tell us right up front. We won't schedule you to work that. But you need to ask, and we're asking the men the same thing. You know, what do you have in mind for childcare? Because you're right, many of them are sharing this responsibility.
I love that, by the way. By the way, you know what I teach a whole class. You don't ask, you don't get, right? Both
That's
men and
right.
women. Articulate what your needs are so we can all put it on the table. And most likely, most companies want to help you, you know, get those needs met because they need you if you're valuable to them. All right, another question. I was hoping the panel could provide advice on how to be a better ally. Mark or Jorge, one of you guys should take that question. How do or even one of the women as well. How to be a better ally?
You know, I'll just jump in really quickly. One of the things that I found that, you know, I shared the story about my mom, and the reason why I share that story is because I was the break glass in case of emergency, taking care of my brother who had epileptic seizures. And so the night before he had one, the sitter wasn't there, and she had exhausted all of her emergency time, they called it back in '76. So I found out. And so she literally prevented me from going to school so that she could get paid for that week's work and or may have lost her job. And so one of the things that fast forward now where I'm at, I realized I wasn't being an ally because I always kept my thoughts and my intent in my heart and in my mind. This work, when you become an ally, you have to live it, you have to practice, you have to get out of your comfort zone and step out and actually take action, and action for impact. And when, you know, when Emily shares her story about Mark, I can almost guarantee you that there was moments, and you don't have to say it, like she came to him and said, hey, this is what happened. And Mark picked up the phone. Or in a meeting, Mark said something. And I think that that's why I go back to, you have to be that guy. If you know, if you're a man as an ally, if you're a woman as an ally, this gets back to what you said, Amy. I've seen situations where it got nasty, right? It's like you want to see the support. Or when a woman says, I think, Caitlyn, this is where you were going one time about if you have the idea and all of a sudden I come behind it and say, we should do this. And everyone's like, Jorge, what a great idea. And you happen to be in that room and you're a woman, you should say, hey, wait a minute, before we give Jorge all the credit, can we just acknowledge right now that Caitlyn said that first? Right? Those are those things that you have to take action. So that's my perspective. Mark, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, I can't, I appreciated Emily's story about what it is. I think, there's two parts, right? There's the don't do this and there's the other side of it. From my perspective, and the association over these years has predominantly been male and, really successful owners of business and everything is, I have a lot of female stuff. I say, hey, there's a line. There's always going to be a line. And Caitlyn put it, she doesn't want it to have to be one of the boys to fit in. I'm like, you don't have to fit in with anything. You just be yourself. You be your 100% authentic self. And if anything happens, you don't got to worry about it. And I have picked up the phone more times than I would have liked to in all these years. I haven't picked it up for a while, but and people were shocked to get the call. Shocked. They almost feel like a betrayal to them that they're getting called out. But it blew their minds that was what the case. And the other one is there's a different form of support, and it's just two questions. And this is one of those other things. What do you need to do your best work, and what's standing in the way? So when I'm cultivating that, that's men and women. But I find I get a lot richer and a lot better conversations with my women managers and leaders in that, because they're really willing to engage in that dialogue, and I don't get as much back. And those two questions are incredibly powerful. What do you need to do your best work, and what is standing in the way? And I get different answers. So those are like default ones until they reach that level of sufficiency where they're just killing it. And then just turn them loose. Okay, go. Come when you need me. And that's my version of champion. I don't know if that's the right one, Amy, but that's what I've been doing. And I'm happy to see the progression of a lot of women that have worked for me.
It sounds great. I wish anyone would say that to me in all the jobs I've ever had, for the record, Mark, just if that makes you feel better. So let me ask one more question.
A really easy
go ahead. Go ahead, Emily.
Am I frozen at all? Okay. Just a really easy one that everybody at any level can find the courage, I think, to help chip away at the good old boys club, or like the toxic culture we find ourselves in, is when somebody says something to you that is sexist, or just like same thing with racist or homophobic, don't say nothing, say something, say, hey, because saying nothing can be a sign of agreement, and anybody can say, hey, not my thing. That's, shit like that's how we find ourselves with the problems we've got today. That's not my thing. I'm not one of your allies in these jokes or these comments. I don't want to hear them. I want you to be better than that. I want us all to be better than that. Is something anybody can say in one of those moments. And it actually really helps, because they say it to you because they think they're in a safe place, right? And when they find out they're not, they have to do some immediate self-reflection. So it really helps. It's just a little thing you can do that chips it away, is you say, I'm not a part of that. I'm not on that team. And, I love you, man. And I want you to be better than that.
So I'm going to try to kill two questions at once for the ending. And one of them was, how do we get more young women interested in breaking stereotypes in this industry? But how do we get more stories out so that more young women also hear about them? I'm going to tell you one of mine. So I have a streaming show on YouTube, and I make sure at every factory that we're in, I go and speak to somebody of diverse population. The 4th episode now has a young woman who's the most experienced welder in the shop. She's of a young woman from, a different type of culture. When you see the show, you'll know right away why she looks different and is different. And I make sure I get her on camera. I make sure I get a person of, color on camera. Every time we go to one of those places, I make sure that anytime I'm on a panel, it's not just me alone. What can some of us do to make sure that we're all seen and get young women to see us and want to be in this space? Maybe like a quick thing. We have 2 minutes left. Each person, what can we do?
Hear from Caitlyn on that.
Yeah. What do we do, Caitlyn?
God, I feel like I wanted to hear from everyone else. I feel like I've just, really stood my ground. When I first started in the industry, someone would call me sweetheart or whatever, like Emily, you were just talking to sexism, and my response was, whatever you say, pumpkin. And I played the game. And that's how I tried to fit in. And over the years, I've asked, well, I put my big girl pants on today. Did you forget yours at home? And so I've kind of turned it around a little bit on them, saying, you can't do this. But to support them. I want to hear from everyone else.
Dina, what can we do? How do we get more people to see more of us out there?
I mean, we're doing it right now, right? We're doing it by getting involved outside of our companies and getting involved in the high schools and, you know, doing the career fairs and forming informal peer groups and taking a young woman along with us when we go
Yeah.
walk a job site. We just have to keep doing it. And we're, like I said, we're getting traction. So just
Good.
more of the same.
I'll tell you, I was on a panel last year. One of the women reached out to me, use your networks. We all just met each other. She said, I'm thinking about changing careers. She works at my company now. Don't just talk about daycare and shoes and how hard it is to be a woman. Use your network, ask for things you want, right? Ask for things you need. Just like Mark had said, don't just talk about, you know, things like just relief that I see another woman in the room. Make friends, use your capital, use your network as capital. Angelica, I think we're wrapping up, right? I don't want to go over. I think we've pretty much answered just about all the questions. Am I right?
Yes, we
The
had
only
one
thing-
more come in.
The survey, we got to remember.
Oh,
to
yes.
talk about the survey.
Please
Yes.
don't forget.
Jorge, you're so good.
I have a
Thank you,
big
Jorge.
note. I wrote it. Ask about the survey.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Autodesk, for sponsoring. Thank you, Amy, for moderating. Thank you, Jorge, Caitlyn, Dina, Donna, Mark, and Emily for participating on the panel today, and all of you for attending, participating, and being champions for change. I'm gonna sign off, and please take the survey, and we'll see you later. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.